Welcome to the earthvox podcast. The earthvox podcast. earthvox podcast.
Let me tell you about one of the best parts of running a show, producing a show in any capacity. Let me quickly mute these other things that are happening in the background now that I've been able to confirm that the show itself is actually popping off live on YouTube and Rumble and X, aka Twitter, and Twitch. When you go in to check your settings, because there's sample rates and bit rates and things that all have to match up so that everything sounds okay and normal. And then you log into your digital audio workstation that operates the audio, and you realize, oh no, my microphone's not working. It was just working a moment ago. Why is it not working now? So you get back into your settings, you look at everything looks normal, and you close it. And you're thinking to yourself, my God, what am I going to do? The microphone's not working. I'm supposed to go live in 2 minutes. And then you realize, oh, all it took was getting in there, looking at it, and then closing it again. And that makes it work fine. Completely inexplicable nonsense. But thank you for joining the show. Please subscribe and share and hit the thumbs up button and leave me a comment and leave me a nice rate and review if you're listening on the numerous audio-only platforms, Apple Podcast and Spotify, and I'm not going to list them all. There's a million of them, and we're on all of them. So thank you for following. I had planned to start talking about Vince Boelter. You know, he's the latest right-wing extremist assassin that we have to deal with in our culture. And his connection to Tim Walz, which is suspicious. And then Tim Walz's connection to China, which is also alarming. And then China's connection to Iran, because China sent some Boeing 747s, which they told everyone were going to Luxembourg, and then sneakily diverted to Iran. What did they take to Iran? But then we bombed Iran last night, and so that's all gone by the wayside. My plan is scrapped. Such is life when you're doing a news show. So we've got to start off talking about Iran. Nothing exciting happened in my personal life to bring you up to speed on. I did hire some kids to mow my grass last weekend, which was amazing. I may or may not have brought that up. I'm still on a nice long cool down from that. If you've never hired a gardener to do your lawn chores for you, I highly recommend it. Now my biggest problem is how I'm going to justify doing that every week or every other week now. Because even though I'm lazy, I'm also very frugal, which often overrides my laziness. Why do I want to pay somebody to do something I can do myself and then save the money to, really just blow on any other number of garbage purchases that I would like to make? Which is another part of my justification. So please help me out. Leave below and tell me below in the comments how I can justify continuing to employ the youth of America. I'm creating jobs, right? I'm creating jobs for kids that are trying to pay their way through college. Hey, come on over. I'll give you $20 and you can enable me to sit on my ass and gain a few more pounds. Doesn't that sound great? So we bombed Iran, and we told Iran that they had 2 weeks to come to the negotiating table. Then we sent B-2 bombers to the west, like out towards China or something. Decoys they were. This, of course, gave Iran some sense of security, that they had some time to spare. Well, we also sent B-2 bombers east. And these were the ones that ultimately dropped bombs on the 3 Iranian nuclear sites. I'm perplexed. I'm a little bit concerned. But I do want to trust Donald Trump because this is what we voted for, right? He's America first. He's going to help us achieve greatness again, or continuing, or in whichever way you want to frame it. But I'm reminded of a few conspiracy theories that I will probably talk about. Now that the ads are over, we can watch this video.
Go to the White House
from Fox News.
This is a Fox News alert. Here's the president.
A short time ago, the U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes on the 3 key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime: Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. Everybody heard those names for years as they built this horribly destructive enterprise. Our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier. For 40 years, Iran has been saying death to America, death to Israel. They have been killing our people, blowing off their arms, blowing off their legs with roadside bombs. That was their specialty. We lost over 1,000 people, and hundreds of thousands throughout the Middle East and around the world have died as a direct result of their hate. In particular, so many were killed by their general, Qasem Soleimani. I decided a long time ago that I would not let this happen. It will not continue. I want to thank and congratulate Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu. We worked as a team like perhaps no team has ever worked before. And we've gone a long way to erasing this horrible threat to Israel. I want to thank the Israeli military for the wonderful job they've done. And most importantly, I want to congratulate the great American patriots who flew those magnificent machines tonight, and all of the United States military on an operation the likes of which the world has not seen in many, many decades. Hopefully, we will no longer need their services in this capacity. I hope that's so. I also want to congratulate the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Raisin-Kane, spectacular general, and all of the brilliant military minds involved in this attack. With all of that being said, this cannot continue. There will be either peace or there will be tragedy for Iran far greater than we have witnessed over the last 8 days. Remember, there are many targets left. Tonight's was the most difficult of them all, by far, and perhaps the most lethal. But if peace does not come quickly, we will go after those other targets with precision, speed, and skill. Most of them can be taken out in a matter of minutes. There's no military in the world that could have done what we did tonight, not even close. There has never been a military that could do what took place just a little while ago. Tomorrow, General Kane, Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth will have a press conference at 8 a.m. at the Pentagon. And I want to just thank everybody, and in particular, God, I want to just say we love you, God, and we love our great military. Protect them. God bless the Middle East. God bless Israel, and God bless America. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, but they're saying that the attacks, in fact, weren't successful. But this is based on what? I mean, we just bombed them last night. So naturally, Iran comes out and says, nuh-uh. No, they didn't. It didn't work. Ha ha. Because, of course, this is the most beneficial thing that Iran could say. The most beneficial statement that Iran could make for Iran. And Donald Trump is going to come out and make a statement that would be the most beneficial for the United States, which is, of course, it was a complete success. And of course, it's beneficial for Iran to say, no, it was a complete failure. Because now we've entered the information war. And this is what I was wondering to myself all week while all anybody wanted to talk about was the war in Iran. The successful strikes that Israel was having against Iran and the failure that Iran was experiencing and their attempted retaliations against Israel. Unfortunately, we don't really have a choice. We can engage in confirmation bias and believe the sources that we would like to believe. I can't bring myself to believe everything that Donald Trump says, even though I want to. I think it would be naive on my part and on the part of anyone else that just wants to willingly and unquestioningly believe information that comes from either side. Of course, the left is going to trash Donald Trump endlessly for anything and everything that he does. And the right, probably 70% of the right, will unquestioningly celebrate everything that Donald Trump does. And it's interesting. I feel like Tim Pool made a prediction a couple of years ago, or a supposition, that Donald Trump had cut a deal with the deep state, with the globalist elite, saying, hey, I'm tired of these endless prosecutions. I'm tired of the threats on my life. I'm tired of the threats on my family. But I will be the next president of the United States, so let's cut a deal. And this prediction or explanation that Tim Pool offered was for war in Iran. Because maybe you remember the 7 countries in 5 years conspiracy theory. From General Wesley Clark, I believe. I copied and pasted this explanation into my notes. The 7 countries in 5 years conspiracy theory originates from a claim made by retired U.S. General Wesley Clark in a 2007 interview. Which is often framed, this conspiracy theory is often framed as evidence of a neoconservative agenda rooted in the Project for the New American Century, PNAC, PNAC, a think tank that advocates for U.S. global hegemony in the post-Cold War era. PNAC's 1998 letter to President Clinton, signed by figures like Wolfowitz and Rumsfeld, explicitly called for regime change in Iraq, citing Saddam Hussein's defiance of UN inspections and alleged WMD programs. What are the 7 countries? Well, I'm sure you can guess. Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Iran. And this conspiracy theory has been twisted up many different ways. Some in the conspiracy theory community claim that these countries were resistant to the central banking Federal Reserve type of economic system that the globalist elite want for the rest of the planet. But when you consider all of these things, I really can't help but feel like Temple was correct. Iran was the last country on the list that had yet to be beaten into submission. But do you think Iran didn't know about this plot? I mean, it was pretty easy to figure out in just the few minutes that I had. Seven countries in 5 years. Wesley Clark, he's been going around giving interviews. You'd have to be really ignorant and naive to think that Iran was somehow in the dark about this plot. Yet they continue to sponsor terror. Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, who, by the way, have now said that they're going to shut down the Strait of Hormuz. From CNN, who's been doing like a continuous coverage, updating stream of content on their website. Prominent advisor to Iran's supreme leader says it must launch missile strikes on U.S. Navy ships, and made a statement about the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, a key oil shipping route. Quote, following America's attack on the Fordow nuclear installation, it is now our turn. Warned, here we go, Hossein Shariat Madari, the editor-in-chief of the hardline Kayhan newspaper, a well-known conservative voice. So, it's always those far-right extremists, who has previously identified himself as Supreme Leader Ayatollah, good Lord, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei's representative. A telegram message from Kayhan quoted Shariat Madari as saying, quote, without hesitation or delay, as a first step, we must launch missile strikes on the American naval fleet based in Bahrain and simultaneously close the Strait of Hormuz to American, British, German, and French shipping. I think that will cause a lot more harm than good. How do you think the response from the United States and the rest of the West, what do you think that would look like? No, we're not going to let you bring your oil through here anymore. The country that's already been like mercilessly bombed by Saudi Arabia. And you know, we came from we had the G7 meeting last week or a couple of weeks ago, in which we all came, I mean, not surprisingly, all came out saying, yes, Iran, we all agree Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And some say Iran never wanted a nuclear weapon. They just wanted nuclear power. Okay. I have some problems with that argument. Namely, a Middle Eastern country that has massive quantities of oil available to it wants wants to switch over to nuclear energy. Now, sure, nuclear energy is superior in my and many other people's opinions. But it seems to me, I mean, do you trust him? They were violating their nuclear deal under Obama, which is why Donald Trump came out and said, we're out of this nuclear deal. And this was, I mean, let's just talk about how we got here. Hillary Clinton supplied Iran with uranium to enrich their nuclear program. This post from @Ricky Doggin on X. I'm sure he's a very credible source, all right? Hillary Clinton supplied Iran with uranium to enrich their nuclear program. Now, that's a little bit of a stretch because the uranium one deal was with Russia, but Russia supports Iran. Russia is also coming out and saying, no, America's strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities were not successful. Barack Obama gave Iran $1.7 billion. Remember the pallets of cash? Barack Obama sent pallets of cash to Iran. This was kind of a lesser known story if you're not running in the conspiracy theory communities. $1.7 billion that they used to fund their nuclear program, courtesy of Barack Obama. And then Joe Biden unfroze over $16 billion of funds for Iran over the course of his administration. But the left will still trot out on social media and no doubt on their podcasts and news broadcasts for all week and into the future about how this is Donald Trump's fault and we never should have been involved. And I am a little bit taken aback because he did say that we weren't going to be involved, but he was then somehow convinced by Israel to become involved. Of course, because we had the bombs. We had the, I'm trying to sort through my out of order notes that were in order until this morning when I realized everything had changed. We need the big bombs. From @Vanguard Intel on X, a former U.S. official informed Axios reporter Barack David that the GBU 57A and B, or /B, Massive Ordnance Penetrator, MOP, a precision-guided bunker buster bomb, was tested twice by the U.S. military in 2024, and the official stated it will work. Do we have audio?
Generate the kinetic energy required
for
the capabilities of the GBU-57, also known as the Massive Ordnance Penetrator. It can penetrate over 60 meters into the ground, around 200 feet. To put that into perspective, this depth is comparable to the height of a 20-story building, depending on the floor heights. These examples demonstrate the significant advancements and differences in penetration levels among these specialized weapons. Let's put an average human here against this weapon, which is 20.5 feet long, giving it a streamlined aerodynamic shape that is crucial for stability and precision. With a diameter of 31.5 inches and weighing an incredible 30,000 pounds, translating to approximately 14,000 kilograms, it utilizes its massive weight to generate the kinetic energy required for deep penetration. This heavy, compact design enables it to break through over 200 feet of reinforced concrete, making it one of the most effective bunker-busting munitions in the world. Let's take a look at the parts of this weapon. The most important part is the body casing, made of hardened ferrocobalt alloy to withstand impact. Interestingly, the body comprises more than 80% of the bomb's total weight. Inside this cover, you will find the following components. At the front is the nose fuse well, all of which are joined by a fuse conduit. Sandwiched within this rod is the explosive-filled 5,000-pound warhead, which translates to approximately 2,267 kilograms. This conduit then connects to a tail fuse, which, interestingly, is the main detonator and is crucial for delayed action. Moving to the back, nestled inside the tail, we discover the intricacies of its guidance system. Here, the inertial guidance kit collaborates seamlessly with the military-grade global positioning unit, ensuring precise navigation towards its intended target. Alongside these components, one can find the adapter ring, which facilitates the attachment of the telemetry antenna, crucial for transmitting data, as well as the encryption key battery, which safeguards sensitive information. Venturing deeper into its structure, we encounter the thermal batteries vital for powering the system and the composite fins strategically positioned to aid in directing the missile towards its objective. These fins, meticulously controlled by internal gears, maneuver with precision, responding to commands to adjust the trajectory accurately. Let's take a look at the smaller bunker buster and how it works. It has a laser sensor at the front.
Why do we need to know about this? Well, we don't really. I don't. Do you? But you know who does? Iran. Here it is, all publicly available on X. It's being spread everywhere.
Finally, we have the retractable fins at the rear.
The reason I bring it to
a better
you
sense of its size,
is
comparing it to a
because Iran was ready for this. This is the reason the Fordow nuclear facility was buried 300 feet underneath a mountain. And this is what gives them, I mean, what the Iranian official said, this facility, Ayatollah, is impenetrable. We don't have to be afraid of America's bunker busting bombs. But you know what? They still evacuated. They still evacuated the facilities. They still knew we were coming. So I'm hearing that the front entrance and the back entrance were collapsed because, of course, that's what you would do if you were concerned about being able to actually penetrate all the way in to the inner workings of the facility. But then Iran comes out and says, you'll never stop our nuclear program. You know, it's just all neener, neener, neener. Because again, that is what is most informationally beneficial. So now, what comes next? It's all a mystery. I am worried about terror attacks in the United States after the free-for-all that we had at the border over the last 4 years. And probably longer. I mean, for God's sake, 20 years ago, we were training the terrorists that took down the Twin Towers, the World Trade Center. I don't think that just stops. And according to Grok, 700 individuals on the terrorist watch list were encountered at the U.S. borders from 2021 to 2024. He says most were apprehended and either detained, removed, or turned over to other agencies for further action. However, some were released into the United States before being later identified and recaptured, with at least 34 remaining in custody. And get this, we get 3 words to elevate our concern: others unaccounted for. And do you think that we weren't having phone conversations? Do you think the Ayatollah wasn't telling Donald Trump, if you attack me, I'm going to activate all the terror cells in the United States? We're going to start blowing up cars. Your citizens will not be safe walking the streets of their own cities. I do have confidence in our FBI. I do have confidence in Homeland Security. Because if you listen to this show, you know, after most tragedies, mass shootings, etc., the FBI always comes out and says, oh, yeah, we were watching that guy. But in the final hours, he eluded us, and this just happened. Because in my opinion, this allows them to implement an agenda. Oh, all these mass shootings that keep happening, even though we were aware of the guy, we let him carry it out anyway, and have now enabled the Democrats and the media to call for more gun control, to call for removing the Second Amendment. Then the terrorist attacks on 9/11 enabled mass surveillance, enable TSA, and enable this 7 countries in 5 years initiative, which is confirmed for all intents and purposes. But I don't think Donald Trump or Israel or even Iran, for that matter, want this to be a protracted engagement, forever war. I don't think Donald Trump's going to let that happen. And Trump has said he is not at all interested in boots on the ground, but earlier this week he also said he wasn't interested in being involved. So what did he learn that made him change his mind? Did they have a nuclear device? Were they days and weeks away? Unfortunately, it sounds a lot like weapons of mass destruction that we heard a lot about leading up to the invasion of Iraq, the largely unjustified invasion of Iraq post 9/11. This angle, this theory is very beneficial to the neocons and the people, the never-Trumpers at the Lincoln Project. Because while they and their puppet masters may be very, and probably are very in favor of prolonged war with Iran, they're already all over social media. Do you have Trump regret yet? Do you regret your vote? So much for peace in the Middle East. So much for no new wars under Trump. They're all so super eager to go out there and throw it in our face. Because they know that the majority of the United States is not in favor of war and boots on the ground. But I did find this poll from the Trafalgar Group. And you know how I feel about polls. I've never been polled, so I am not represented. But they asked the question, what is your opinion of President Trump's position that Iran must be prevented from developing a nuclear weapon by any means necessary? According to this poll, 74.4% of respondents approve, 22.9% disapprove, and 2.7% have no opinion. So what do you think? You probably want to know what I think. I'm having a hard time deciding what I think. Because I think we probably shouldn't be involved. But I also think Iran shouldn't have a nuclear weapon. I also think Iran shouldn't be sponsoring terror groups that are on every side of Israel. Because that's how we got here, right? October 7th, Hamas killing thousands of Israelis. And then Israel saying, that's all right, we're pissed. We're tired of this. We know where the money is coming from. It's coming from Iran. So Israel attacks Hamas, levels Gaza. They attacked Hezbollah to the point where they surrendered. And the Houthis in Yemen weren't far behind. Then they attack Iran. Iran attacks back. Include a bunch of information that we're not privy to. But the sales pitch to the American people is weapons of mass destruction again. And then this plane from China, these planes from China, carrying what? The most reputable source that I was able to find suggested it was missile components, navigational GPS components, the things that we all learned about that bunker buster bomb just now. Solid propellants for the missiles they plan to launch in the future. And I just wonder how far China is going to go. Because we have evidence that they've been up to some very bad things. Things that I think would warrant some kind of retaliation in one way or another. The headline from Fox News, mystery flights from China to Iran raise questions amid Israel conflict. Several Boeing 747s have been spotted on radar leaving China for Iran over the last week, according to reports, sparking concerns that the CCP is helping the Middle Eastern nation transport cargo or people out of the country as Israel continues to strike the country's nuclear facilities. China would like to make this a prolonged engagement, especially now that the United States is involved. Because we've been drained in Ukraine. Of course, nobody wants to talk about this, but the murmuring is we don't have a lot of missiles. We don't have a lot of equipment to give Israel. We don't have a lot of equipment to use against Iran. Because Joe Biden sent it all to Ukraine over the last 4 years. China loves that. That's probably why China worked so tirelessly to get Joe Biden elected. We might not be able to talk about Vance Boelter. I'm still working out how to tie this all together in reverse. This came out of Just the News earlier this week. Let's see. I still need to share the screen for you. But it went largely unreported because we all had to talk about Iran. The headline, FBI gives Congress intel on alleged Chinese plots to create fake mail-in ballots in 2020. FBI Director Kash Patel on Monday evening turned over to Congress an intelligence report raising concerns that China had mass-produced fake U.S. driver's licenses to carry out a scheme to hijack the 2020 election with fake mail-in ballots for Democrat Joe Biden. The newly declassified intelligence reports from August 2020 weren't corroborated or fully investigated and instead were recalled from intelligence agencies about the time that then FBI Director Chris Wray testified there were no known plots of foreign interference ahead of the 2020 election, in which Biden defeated Donald Trump. And remember Chris Krebs? At this point, it's been so long I forget what his job was. But he's the guy that came out and said, oh, this was the most secure election in history. Yep, nothing to worry about. Officials who have seen the documents told Just the News the FBI had a relatively new confidential source who provided information in summer 2020 that the Chinese government was manufacturing and exporting fake U.S. driver's licenses as part of a plot to create voter identities for Chinese residents living in the United States so they could vote with fake mail-in ballots. The intelligence source claimed the plot was specifically designed to benefit Biden, officials said. They also said the intelligence report was recalled within a few weeks and the allegations never fully investigated on the grounds that the source needed to be re-interviewed. Oh, he said that? Oh, okay. Well, we can't investigate because we got to interview him again. Okay. But in fact, another agency, U.S. Customs and Border Protection, had intercepted nearly 20,000 fake licenses around the time the intelligence came in a possible corroboration of the report. Now, I don't know if you remember, but I covered on this podcast, some iteration of this podcast, several years ago. Why won't this close? Stupid. I'm blocking your notifications. Newsweek.com, which is where I found this article from updated July 22nd, 2020. Documents were reported to be burning in the courtyard of the Chinese consulate building in Houston. Which is being shuttered this Friday. I mean, this Friday from, 5 years ago. The U.S. ordered the closure of the consulate Tuesday, giving staff there 72 hours to leave the country. So let's just check this. This article said the report came August of 2020, and the Chinese consulate was closed July of 2020. Quote, at about 8:25 p.m. on Tuesday, our officers responded to meet the firefighter call to the China Consulate General in Houston at 3417 Montrose Boulevard. Smoke was observed in an outside courtyard area. Officers were not granted access to enter the building, the Houston Police Department said in a post on its official Twitter account. And I remember seeing pictures. I don't think there's any pictures in this report. Here's a Twitter link to a post, which I feel will not be helpful. Nope, because it's not there. It links to something different. Back you go. I remember seeing the picture. It looked like ballots. It looked like ballots to me. People were taking pictures from opposite buildings, looking down into the courtyard where they were having the fire. And they had those yellow papers, that unmistakable yellow paper that comes in your mail-in ballot. It was literally the first thing I thought of. I don't think this video is going to show us anything. No, it's all B-roll. It's all B-roll, but you can kind of see, if you're watching the video, you can kind of see where the courtyard is. And they covered it up. Chris Wray's FBI covered up this information. 20,000 fake licenses were seized by U.S. Customs and Border Patrol. Those are the ones that they found. Those are the ones that they caught and stopped. From Fox News back in July 2020, again, the headline, U.S. officials raid Chinese consulate in Houston believed to be spy hub. So how does this pencil out for you? We found out the Chinese consulate in Houston was being used as a spy hub and a base of operations to cheat in the upcoming election. Somehow they got wind of this because, espionage. And they burned all of the evidence and wouldn't let fire crews come in. I want to know how much longer we're going to let China get away with this stuff. Blatant. like they're daring us. And then maybe you heard the story about the agro-terrorists that were arrested last week or two weeks ago. This article actually from June 17th from the Epoch Times. Headline: Arrests of Chinese scientists highlight bio-warfare threat to the U.S. And oh, it's written like a novel. He woke up early one morning, and as he ate his eggs Benedict, he decided today was the day. He was going to smuggle the mold into the United States. These two Chinese scientists I'll just read it. All right. No, these two Chinese scientists smuggled in a tissue, a round piece of filter paper with a series of circles drawn on it, 4 clear plastic bags containing small reddish plant material. What was this plant material? It was a fungus, a pathogen that could be used in agroterrorism, a form of biological warfare that targets food supply chains through the infection of major crops such as wheat, corn, and rice. It also produces toxins harmful to humans and livestock, making it a dual threat to food security and public health. The discovery by Customs and Border Protection led to further investigation and eventual charges filed against Liu and his girlfriend, Zhenyun King, on June 2nd. They worked at the University of Michigan. They were members of the Chinese Communist Party, allegedly. Just a week after the case made headlines, a similar scene played out at a Detroit Metro airport with a third Chinese scientist, Han Chengshuan, a doctoral candidate from China's Huazhong University of Science and Technology in central China's Wuhan city. Han was accused of bringing in biological material from a roundworm. Like the other two Chinese nationals, she was attempting to conduct further research at a University of Michigan lab. This is agroterrorism. This is bioterrorism. These are the things that China thinks they can get away with. This is the 5th generational warfare. We're going to bring in this fungus. We're going to bring in these pathogens. We're going to bring in these parasites. And we're going to unleash them on the United States population. Oh, yeah, but COVID just came from a bat mysteriously. I mean, this is what I'm immediately reminded of. Wait a minute, they told us all of this stuff about COVID, but now we're catching them doing these other kind of things. They're trying to cheat our elections. They're trying to obliterate our crops, our reproductive health. I know I bought what I thought were praying mantis eggs because I was starting a garden in my backyard. Don't look at me. And I followed the directions. I put them in the bag. I put them out in the sunlight so that they could just, I never saw a single praying mantis. But I did find that summer a strangely large number of gigantic grasshoppers that had suddenly found their way into my backyard. Immediately, because this is how my brain works. I immediately thought, that son of a bitch sent me grasshoppers. Not praying mantis. Not praying manti. Grasshopper eggs to destroy my crops, which I don't think they did. I think I killed many of them with my lawnmower. What did he do it on purpose? Was it an accident? Was he a Chinese agent? Was he an ignorant Arkansas farmer? What am I meant to believe? But just think about this on the topic of Chinese election interference. The margin of victory for the 2020 presidential election in Arizona was 10,457 votes. In Georgia, it was 11,779 votes. And Customs and Border Patrol found one shipment of 20,000 fake driver's licenses with the alleged purpose of influencing the 2020 election, cheating, creating fake ballots. What would you like Donald Trump's response to China? B. We can't drop bombs. Our economy is still extensively linked to China. I mean, this is why the Chinese tariffs were such a big deal, right? Again, I say, go into Walmart and find me something that's not made in China. I actually thought about dedicating a YouTube video to this, a la Mr. Beast. Something like approach people as they're checking out and say, hey, if you can find me something here that you're buying, that although it wouldn't work for food, because most of our food, thankfully, is made in the United States still. Even though China is slowly chipping away at that as well, with all their purchase of United States farmland, with their purchases of American food producing companies. This, I think, is what allows them to do these kind of things, to sabotage our elections, to sabotage our agriculture, to sabotage our public health. Because they think that we are too reliant on them. And maybe we are. How do we fix that? How do we fix that without enduring a lot of economic pain? I don't know what Donald Trump's plan is to respond to that. But I think the more China becomes involved with Iran, the more they will draw the ire of the United States. And a war with China is nothing that anyone wants. But how can we avoid it when they continue to do these kind of things? I mean, this isn't just, oh, we Chinese don't like the American government. This feels like a personal attack. They're attacking our farmers. They're attacking our food. But we're worried about Iran and their conflict with Israel. This is what bothers me. Iran is paying off United States politicians, and this was how I was eventually going to get into the Iran story because of this Vince Boelter character. Vance Boelter? Belter? This guy feels like an operative to me. He killed 2 state-level Minnesota politicians after they voted against providing free health care to illegal immigrants. From CNN, the man accused of shooting Democratic state lawmakers in Minnesota on Saturday while impersonating a police officer worked for a security company that advertised a fleet of police-type vehicles and other equipment that could potentially have aided him in appearing to be law enforcement. Vance Boelter was also an outspoken evangelical Christian who traveled to Africa to tell his faith story, and in at least one sermon pointedly questioned American morals on sexual orientation, according to videos and social media posts reviewed by CNN. So that's a trust me, bro, kind of fact check there. Boelter was a conservative who was strongly against abortion rights, a longtime friend told CNN on Saturday. But Boelter never mentioned any particular anger with the lawmakers who were shot, right? So this guy, deeply religious conservative that Tim Walz decided to hire. This is where it gets really interesting. From InfoWars. Alleged assassin of Minnesota politicians says he was hired by Democrat governor and ex-vice presidential candidate Tim Walz to kill Dem Senator Amy Klobuchar so he could run for her seat. Now, this is slightly misleading. Because if Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, has Amy Klobuchar, senator from Minnesota, all he has to do is appoint himself to be the senator from Minnesota. Because that's how the politics works in Minnesota. Let's read some from the article. Vance Boelter, the individual accused of shooting a pair of Minnesota Democrat politicians and their spouses earlier this month, reportedly wrote a letter to the FBI saying he was hired directly by the state's governor, Tim Walz, to also kill Democrat Senator Amy Klobuchar, so Walz could run for her empty Senate seat. Now, people will push back and say, oh, yes, but his manifesto that existed or did not exist, depending on who you talk to, said that he wanted to also kill Tim Walz. Okay, well, if you were orchestrating a plot to kill a senator so that you could take her Senate seat, how would you cover your tracks? Let's put it that way. Well, of course, you'd put yourself on the people to kill list that this guy had. But here's another thing that really drives me crazy.
Assassin who disguised himself.
We have this video from Fox News, Jesse Waters, that will show you a brief clip, a brief picture of this guy captured on security cam. Now, if you're not watching, of course, this mother effing video isn't playing now because everything works perfectly always.
Assassin who disguised himself as a cop to shoot down Democrat politicians and their spouses. He killed 2 and seriously injured 2 others. Today, we're finding out he wrote a letter to the FBI claiming he was trained by the U.S. military, quote, off the books, and that Tim Walz asked him to kill Amy Klobuchar so he could take her Senate seat.
Thank you, Jesse. Now, what do you notice from these security camera videos or screenshots that they're showing us in this video? He's wearing a mask. He's wearing like a full-on Michael Myers, completely covers his head. You can barely see his eyes mask. And then they tell us, oh, but this is the guy. How do you know? How do you know this is the guy? How do you know that this isn't just another patsy? Like Lee Harvey Oswald. Or Luigi Mangione. Remember, we moved so quickly past the part of that story where we discuss whether or not this is actually the guy that did it, right to, yep, he's the guy that did it. Now, let's lionize him. Let's celebrate him on the left. Oh, he's just a poor, beleaguered, put out consumer that couldn't take the corruption of the healthcare industry. So he took the law into his own hands and went and killed a really corrupt evil person and we should all celebrate it. Okay. Are we sure that's the guy? Because all we really have are some security camera feeds that don't really show us anything. Something from a bank where he was wearing a mask over his face. But the media agrees, the Department of Justice agrees. So that's it, case closed. Electric chair, I guess. I don't know why. I don't know why it's so easy for me to believe that this is a Tim Walz plot. Because, I mean, he's broke. This is generally what happens when you lose a presidential bid or a vice presidential bid. People stop giving you money. You were living on the high horse because you were the number 2, heartbeat away from the presidency. But then you lost, bro. You blew it. You couldn't make it happen. But all those evil people that were giving you money, they still want you to be in charge. Like, remember Hillary Clinton and the Clinton Foundation? Oh, she lost in 2016, and boy, all those donations dried up really fast. Almost like foreign and corporate investment in politics is a real thing. And foreign interests and corporations are really the ones that control the decision-making process in American politics and other global politics as well, I would imagine. So they say, Tim Walz, hey, listen, we gave you lots and lots of money. You think you're just going to squirm away back under the rock from whence you came? No, you better figure it out, bro. You better figure out a way to get some power for yourself. And what would be the easiest way to do that? Well, maybe a United States senator would have some unfortunate accident. And then you could just appoint yourself to be the new senator, which is legal. I looked into it. The governor of the state of Minnesota appoints the new senator should the seat be vacated at some point during the term. Now, let's see. I just need to know. I just need to flesh this out a little bit, because you do have to, at a certain point, run for re-election. But when was Amy Klobuchar re-elected? Because he could have a nice long term in the Senate should he be successful. 2024, she just won her re-election. Now it becomes all hypothetical, because Amy Klobuchar, of course, was not assassinated. Although I suppose there's still time. I do not wish any harm to befall her. And certainly, I do not wish for the success of any assassination attempts. But it feels like a very viable theory to me. We know Tim Walz isn't the person that he claims to be. Every time he goes to testify, every time he goes in front of a camera for anything, we seem to learn some new story that he's trying to pass off to the American voters. But how did he get caught? And of course, as I mentioned, the Chinese ties were meant to segue into the Chinese conversation as it pertains to their involvement with Iran and supporting their war efforts against Israel. But when I found this article, the first thing I thought was, how did this go unreported? From the Washington Examiner, back in August 2024, August 7th, Tim Walz's ties to communist China demand attention. Vice President Kamala Harris' selection of Governor Tim Walz as her running mate was met with glee by many Democrats, but also by Republicans. The left views Walz as a Midwestern progressive whose Minnesota nice persona will help Harris win contested states. But alongside a left-wing record that is sure to attack Republican campaign fire, Walz's deep affection for communist China is also likely to attract attention. Shortly after finishing his undergraduate degree in his native Nebraska in 1989, Walz headed to China to teach in a high school in Guangdong province, north of Hong Kong. Say that 5 times fast. Asked later about his motivation for this, at a time when few Americans spent time in China, Walz explained, quote, "China was coming, and that's the reason that I went," whatever that means. Upon his return home, Walz and his wife established a company called Educational Travel Adventures, centered on taking American students to China. Together, the couple visited China every summer until 2003, including spending their honeymoon there. Much as Senator Bernie, all right, yeah, honey, Bernie Sanders went to the Soviet Union. All right, we get it. By his admission, Walz has visited the country about 30 times. Many might ask, so what? Although Democrats insist that Walz had advocated human rights and the cause of Tibet, yeah, we get it. It was all about making China more Western. But the wealth of China proved to be too much for these weak, pathetic, corrupt American politicians. Because they were all seduced by the promises of China. While Walz's relationship with the Chinese Communist Party may be nowhere near as dramatic or sinister as that fictional one, we need to ask what's going on here, particularly in light of Walz's admission in 1993 that his leading of student groups to China was funded by the regime. What did China think it was getting in exchange for this investment? What indeed? What did Walz think Beijing expected in return? Or what did he know? You want to know why Joe Biden was our president for the last 4 years? You want to know why they picked Kamala Harris and Tim Walz to succeed him? This is why. I mean, I think it can't be. I mean, can it be more obvious? Are you somehow unconvinced? I'd really like to know. Maybe I'm being biased. Maybe I've got blinders on. But just think about what you know what we've learned about Joe Biden in recent months. About his mental state, about his cancer, about all of the things that the Democrats in the mainstream media were happy to hide from us. I mean, this story that came out in 2024, not even a year ago, from the Washington Examiner, that should have been a big deal. And maybe you heard about it. I didn't. I kind of pay close attention to this kind of stuff. The fact that nothing was done about our border, who do you think pushed for that? Why isn't our focus on China? That's what I'm upset about. I'm not upset that we're supporting our allies in the Middle East. I'm slightly upset that Israel just decided they were going to start attacking Middle Eastern countries and then beg us for help. I think they owe us an explanation. And I think while Donald Trump may be a staunch defender of Israel, I think he's probably pretty pissed off that they drug us into this conflict. But what do you think changed his mind? Was it intel that there was, in fact, a weapon of mass destruction again? A nuclear bomb? Or was this all the plan from the get-go? The Israeli security failures, alleged security failures, October 7th. And of course, it's not that he can't walk and chew gum at the same time. But I would really, sincerely, like to have the political focus turned towards the United States and the very real threats that face the American people domestically and politically. And let Israel and Iran fight their own war if that's what they decide to do. I hope we were successful, and I hope it's over fast, because I don't want to continue Middle Eastern conflicts. And I don't think Donald Trump wants to either. I think it's over quick. I think bombs may continue to fall, but I don't think boots on the ground. We just don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. We can't predict the future, and we really can't trust any of the developing stories, because each side has its agenda, and each side will tell the story that they wish to be told. They will tell the story that is the most politically beneficial, and the story that benefits their narrative to the maximum. So, of course, we'll be covering the future developments over the coming weeks, giving it to you as accurately as possible. Tune back in Sunday at 11 a.m. next week for more coverage. And I sincerely hope that I don't have anything more to say about developments in Iran. It's just hard for me to have faith that these people are going to put their needs of their citizens before their own and the needs of the globalist elite. So with that, thank you for joining me. Please give me a follow at earthvox everywhere. Share the show if you haven't already. You can send an email to therealearthvox at protonmail.com. You can leave me a voicemail at 701-787-1121. I'll be back.